conference room had floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking downtown Seattle, but all eyes were on me. Colton Kingsley sat at the head of the table with his signature smirk, the one that had become his trademark at Elevate over the past 3 years. Across from us sat the Tokyo delegation, 4 executives from Tanaka Holdings, one of Asia's most formidable acquisition groups, ready to decide who would manage their $150 million North American expansion contract. I was halfway through my market analysis slide when Colton's laugh cut through my presentation. "I'm sorry," he interrupted, not sounding sorry at all, "but are we really supposed to believe these projections? Evie, sweetheart, these numbers look like they came from a college internship project." His team joined in with scattered chuckles. My hands tightened around the presentation clicker. "The methodology is sound," I continued, keeping my voice steady. "Based on Q3 data across similar methodology," Colton repeated mockingly, turning to our clients. "She's been with us for what, 18 months? And she thinks she can lecture us on methodology." He leaned back in his chair, arms crossed. "Maybe we should let the grown-ups handle this part of the presentation." The room fell silent. Even his own team members shifted uncomfortably. But Mr. Tanaka's expression remained unreadable, his 3 associates similarly impassive. What Colton didn't know, what nobody in that room knew except me, was that I'd spent the previous evening having dinner with Mr. Tanaka's executive assistant, who'd casually mentioned in Japanese that they were frustrated with agencies that talked down to clients and underestimated their intelligence. What Colton definitely didn't know was that I'd spent 4 years in Osaka after college, working for a boutique consulting firm before returning to the States. My Japanese wasn't just conversational. It was business fluent. I set down my clicker. Slowly, deliberately, I removed my headset. Then I turned to Mr. Tanaka and spoke in perfect Japanese. "Mr. Tanaka, I apologize for wasting your time with this presentation. It's clear that Elevate's leadership doesn't value the research your team specifically requested, nor do they respect the professionalism you deserve." Mr. Tanaka's eyebrows rose slightly. His associate sat up straighter. I continued, still in Japanese. "If you're interested in the actual strategic analysis your company needs, I'm prepared to discuss terms independently. My retainer would be 15% of the contract value, and I'll need complete access to Elevate's client logs and research files. We would proceed without Mr. Kingsley's involvement." The color drained from Colton's face as he realized what was happening. "Welcome to Payback Office, where we share stories of workplace justice and professional victories." What happened in that conference room changed everything about my career, but the real story started long before that moment. If these kinds of stories resonate with you, the ones where preparation meets opportunity and underestimation becomes someone's biggest mistake, it would mean a lot if you'd subscribe. We're working toward our goal of 7,000 subscribers, and having you as part of this community makes all the difference. My name is Evie Preston, and at the time of that meeting, I was a senior strategy consultant at Elevate, one of Seattle's premier business consulting agencies. But my journey to that conference room started in a much different place. I grew up in Tacoma, raised by a single mother who worked 2 jobs to keep us stable. She cleaned office buildings at night, ironically, sometimes the very buildings I'd later work in, and during the day, she was a home health aide. Money was tight, but Mom made sure I understood something crucial. Empathy isn't a weakness, it's intelligence. She'd tell me, "Evie, the people others overlook are often the ones who know the most. Never forget that." That lesson stuck with me through community college, through my scholarship to University of Washington, through my decision to take a low-paying position in Japan instead of jumping straight into corporate America. I learned Japanese because I wanted to understand, not just translate. I learned consulting because I wanted to solve problems, not just make presentations. When I joined Elevate 18 months before that fateful meeting, I was grateful for the opportunity. The agency had a solid reputation, impressive clients, and competitive pay. What I didn't expect was Colton Kingsley. Colton had been promoted to Director of Client Relations just weeks before I started. At 34, he was the youngest director in Elevate's history, and he made sure everyone knew it. His office was decorated with awards, his desk positioned to face the door so visitors would see him framed against the Seattle skyline. He wore expensive suits and carried himself with the kind of confidence that bordered on arrogance. Our first interaction set the tone for everything that followed. I'd been assigned to support a mid-level retail client, preparing market entry research for their expansion into the Pacific Northwest. I'd spent 3 weeks on comprehensive analysis, including demographic studies, competitor mapping, and consumer behavior patterns. I was proud of the work. Colton called me into his office on a Friday afternoon. "Evie Preston," he said, not looking up from his computer. "The new girl from, where was it, Tacoma?" "Yes, sir, I'm actually here about the retail project, I know." He finally looked at me, his expression dismissive. "I glanced through your report. It's fine. Basic, but fine. Good enough for a small client." My report was anything but basic. It included proprietary analysis techniques I developed during my time in Japan, cross-referencing methods that most consultants never considered. "I appreciate the feedback," I said carefully. "If there are specific areas you'd like me to expand on, here's what you need to understand about Elevate," Colton interrupted, leaning back in his chair. "We have tiers. Small clients get standard work. Mid-tier clients get good work. Our premium clients, the ones bringing in 7- and 8-figure contracts, they get the exceptional work. That's where people like me focus our energy." "I understand the business model," I replied, "but every client deserves our best effort." He laughed at that. "That's adorable, very earnest. But this isn't college, and we're not graded on effort. We're measured on profit margins and client retention at the top tier. Everything else is just noise." That conversation told me everything I needed to know about Colton Kingsley. He saw consulting as a game of appearances and hierarchies, not as genuine problem-solving. Clients weren't partners, they were revenue streams. Junior consultants weren't team members, they were disposable resources. Over the following months, I watched him operate. He'd take credit for his team's work in client meetings. He'd throw junior staff under the bus when projects faced challenges. He'd schmooze with executives while dismissing the little people who actually did the research and analysis. But Colton's real talent was political maneuvering within Elevate itself. He had a gift for making himself look good to the partners while creating an environment of fear and competition among everyone below him. People didn't collaborate under Colton's leadership. They survived. I kept my head down and did excellent work. I built relationships with clients directly, learned their businesses deeply, and delivered results that exceeded expectations. My client satisfaction scores were the highest in my cohort. My project completion rate was flawless. None of it mattered to Colton. In his view, I was just another junior consultant, easily replaceable, useful only for grunt work while he collected the accolades. Then Tanaka Holdings came along. The opportunity landed on Elevate's radar in early March. Tanaka Holdings, a Tokyo-based conglomerate with interests in technology, real estate, and manufacturing, was planning a major North American expansion. They were looking for a consulting partner to manage the entire operation: market analysis, acquisition targets, integration strategy, regulatory compliance, everything. The contract was estimated at $150 million over 3 years. It would be the largest deal in Elevate's history. Colton immediately claimed the pitch as his own. He assembled a team of senior consultants, brought in specialists, and started developing what he called the presentation of our careers. I wasn't included. I was too junior, too inexperienced, too unproven for something this important. But 3 weeks before the pitch meeting, one of Colton's senior team members quit unexpectedly. Personal reasons, family emergency, had to relocate immediately. It left a gap in the research division. Colton needed someone who could do quality work quickly without requiring hand-holding or claiming too much credit. Someone competent but invisible. He chose me. "Preston," Colton said when he called me into his office, "I'm putting you on the Tanaka project. We need comprehensive market analysis for their North American real estate acquisition strategy. I need data on commercial property trends, demographic shifts, regulatory environments across 12 metropolitan areas. You have 10 days. 10 days for work that would normally take a month." But I nodded. "I'll get it done." "This is high profile," he warned. Don't make me regret bringing you in, just deliver clean data. Don't try to be creative or impressive. Clean, simple, usable data. Understand? Understood. I understood perfectly. He wanted me to do the hard work while staying invisible. I dove into the research with everything I had. 12-hour days, working through weekends, cross-referencing data sources, building models, identifying patterns that others might miss. But I also did something else. I researched Tanaka Holdings themselves. Their corporate history, their acquisition philosophy, their leadership team's backgrounds and preferences. I read interviews with Mr. Tanaka in Japanese business publications. I studied their past partnerships and what made them successful or unsuccessful. One detail caught my attention. Tanaka Holdings had a reputation for ending relationships with partners who showed cultural insensitivity or who talked down to their team. They valued respect and directness over flashy presentations. On day 8, I discovered something else. Elevate's preliminary proposal included market assumptions that were already outdated. The demographic data Colton's team was using came from projections that hadn't accounted for recent policy changes in zoning laws across 3 of our target cities. The numbers weren't wrong exactly, but they weren't right either. I brought it to Colton's attention in an email, carefully worded, with corrected data and sources. He responded within an hour. Your job is to provide the data I requested, not to second-guess the strategic direction. Stay in your lane. I printed that email and kept it in my folder. 2 days before the meeting, Colton's team did a practice run-through. I sat in the back of the conference room, watching them present. The slides were beautiful, the delivery was polished, but the substance had gaps. They were selling style over substance, confidence over accuracy. After the practice session, I approached Colton one more time. The presentation looks good, I said, but I really think we should update the demographic sections. I can have revised slides ready by tomorrow morning. He looked at me with barely concealed irritation. Evie, you did your job. You provided data. Now let the people who understand client relations handle the presentation. We're selling them on our expertise and our vision, not drowning them in numbers. But if they ask specific questions about the methodology, then I'll handle it, he snapped. That's why I'm the director and you're not. Know your role. I knew my role perfectly well, and I was beginning to understand that this presentation was heading toward disaster, with Colton too arrogant to see it coming. The night before the meeting, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about my mother's advice, about seeing what others overlooked. Everyone was focused on impressing Tanaka Holdings. Nobody was focused on respecting them. At 2 in the morning, I got out of bed and did something that might have been reckless or might have been brilliant. I wrote a separate analysis, a completely different approach to the Tanaka expansion strategy. Where Colton's presentation focused on aggressive acquisition and rapid growth, my analysis emphasized sustainable integration and cultural adaptation. I included risk factors that Colton had glossed over. I presented conservative projections with detailed supporting evidence. I didn't plan to show it to anyone. It was just for me, a way to organize my thoughts about what Tanaka Holdings actually needed versus what Colton wanted to sell them. Then the meeting happened. The morning started normally enough. Our team gathered in the lobby of Elevate's downtown office. Colton wore his most expensive suit, navy blue with subtle pinstripes. He was in his element, confident and commanding. The other senior consultants flanked him like an entourage. I carried the backup materials, wearing my best professional outfit, which still wasn't quite as expensive as everyone else's. But I'd learned long ago that quality work mattered more than quality clothes. We set up in the main conference room, the one usually reserved for only the most important clients. Colton personally arranged the seating to position himself at the power spot. Directly across from where Mr. Tanaka would sit, the Tanaka Holdings delegation arrived precisely on time. Mr. Tanaka led the group, a distinguished man in his early 60s with steel-gray hair and observant eyes. His 3 associates followed, Ms. Hayashi, their CFO, Mr. Yamamoto, their head of North American operations, and Ms. Kobayashi, their legal counsel. Colton greeted them with exaggerated enthusiasm, shaking hands with the kind of firm grip that was supposed to project confidence but often just projected aggression. I bowed slightly when introduced, a gesture of respect that Mr. Tanaka acknowledged with a subtle nod. The presentation began smoothly. Colton opened with Elevate's credentials, our past successes, our vision for Tanaka Holdings' expansion. He spoke with the polished delivery of someone who'd done this 100 times. Then we reached the market analysis section. My section. Colton transitioned to my slides, but immediately started editorializing, adding his own interpretations that weren't supported by the data. He simplified complex patterns into sound bites. He made promises about market conditions that the research couldn't guarantee. I noticed Miss Hayashi frowning slightly as she reviewed the supporting documents. Then Colton began presenting the demographic projections, the ones I'd warned him about, the ones based on outdated zoning assumptions. Mr. Yamamoto raised his hand. "Excuse me, but these population density projections for the Austin market, are they accounting for the recent changes in commercial zoning regulations?" Colton didn't miss a beat. "Absolutely. Our research is comprehensive and current." But it wasn't, and I could see from Mr. Yamamoto's expression that he knew it wasn't. That's when Colton made his first mistake. Instead of acknowledging the valid question, he deflected. "Our team has done extensive analysis. I assure you, we've considered all relevant factors." Mr. Yamamoto didn't look convinced, but he nodded politely and let the presentation continue. We reached my detailed market analysis, the part I'd spent 10 days perfecting. I stood to present, connecting my laptop to the display. I'd made it through maybe 3 slides when Colton interrupted with that laugh. "I'm sorry, but are we really supposed to believe these projections? Evie, sweetheart, these numbers look like they came from a college internship project." The room temperature seemed to drop. I stopped mid-sentence, shock rendering me momentarily speechless. In all my professional experience, I'd never been publicly humiliated like this, especially not in front of clients. "The methodology is sound," I managed to say, though my voice wavered slightly. "Based on Q3 data across similar metropolitan markets." "Methodology," he repeated, turning to the Tanaka delegation with a conspiratorial smile, as if sharing an inside joke. "She's been with us for what, 18 months? And she thinks she can lecture us on methodology." His senior consultants shifted in their seats, clearly uncomfortable but unwilling to challenge their director. Colton continued, warming to his performance. "Maybe we should let the grown-ups handle this part of the presentation. Why don't you take a seat, Evie, and I'll walk our clients through what these numbers actually mean." That's when something inside me crystallized. All the months of watching Colton take credit, shift blame, and treat people as disposable resources. All the work I'd done that he dismissed or minimized. All the times I'd stayed silent to be professional, to be a team player, to not make waves. And I thought about the Tanaka Holdings team sitting across from us, intelligent professionals being subjected to this circus, watching Colton's ego show instead of receiving the respect they deserved. I thought about my mother cleaning offices at night so I could have opportunities. About what she'd taught me about empathy and about seeing what others overlooked. And I realized that everyone in this room was overlooking something important. The fact that I'd spent my evening having dinner with Tanaka Holdings' executive assistant, who'd mentioned in Japanese their frustration with American consultants who prioritized flash over substance. I set down the clicker, removed my headset, and made a choice. When I turned to Mr. Tanaka and began speaking in Japanese, the change in the room was immediate and electric. "Mr. Tanaka, I apologize for wasting your time with this presentation," I said, my Japanese formal and precise. "It's clear that Elevate's leadership doesn't value the research your team specifically requested, nor do they respect the professionalism you deserve." Mr. Tanaka's expression shifted from polite attention to genuine interest. Miss Hayashi set down her pen, giving me her full focus. I continued in Japanese. "If you're interested in the actual strategic analysis your company needs, I'm prepared to discuss terms independently. My retainer would be 15% of the contract value, and I'll need complete access to Elevate's client logs and research files for this project. We would proceed without Mr. Kingsley's involvement." Colton finally found his voice. "What the hell are you doing?" I ignored him, maintaining eye contact with Mr. Tanaka. Mr. Tanaka responded in Japanese, his tone measured but direct. "You speak our language." "That's unexpected." I worked in Osaka for 4 years, I replied, still in Japanese, at Mizuki Consulting. I learned that business isn't about presentations, it's about understanding. Miss Hayashi leaned forward, also speaking in Japanese. The zoning regulation question. Your data doesn't account for it, does it? The data in this presentation doesn't, I admitted. I flagged the issue 2 days ago, but Mr. Kingsley decided the original projections were sufficient. I have updated analysis in my files that accounts for all recent regulatory changes across all 12 target markets. This is insane, Colton stood up, his face reddening. You're sabotaging your own company, your own team. I'm doing the job you hired me to do, I said, switching to English. Providing accurate analysis and honest counsel to clients. You just wanted a performance. Mr. Yamamoto spoke up in English. Miss Preston, you mentioned independent terms. You would leave Elevate. If you require expertise without interference, yes. Colton slammed his hand on the table. You can't do this. You signed a non-compete. You have confidentiality agreements. I'll have legal bury you so deep. The non-compete restricts me from soliciting Elevate's clients, I said calmly. I didn't solicit anyone. I responded to a direct question about independent engagement. As for confidentiality, all the research you're threatening me over is work I personally completed. My contract specifies that consultants retain rights to their own methodologies and analytical frameworks. I'd read my employment contract very carefully when I first joined Elevate. Most people didn't bother with the details. I wasn't most people. Miss Kobayashi, the legal counsel, smiled slightly. She appreciated thoroughness. Mr. Tanaka stood. Mr. Kingsley, I believe this meeting is concluded. Miss Hayashi, Mr. Yamamoto, Miss Kobayashi, let's reconvene at our hotel. Then, to me, in Japanese, Miss Preston, please join us in 1 hour. We have questions about your updated analysis. I bowed. Of course, Mr. Tanaka. As the Tanaka Holdings team filed out of the conference room, Colton rounded on me with pure fury. You just destroyed your career, he hissed. You think you can betray Elevate and walk away. I'll make sure you never work in consulting again. I'll personally call every agency in Seattle, every firm on the West Coast. You'll do nothing, came a voice from the doorway. We both turned. Richard Ashford, one of Elevate's founding partners, stood watching us. I had no idea how long he'd been there. Richard, Colton immediately shifted his tone. I can explain. This consultant went rogue, tried to steal a client right in front of. I heard everything, Richard said quietly. The part where you publicly humiliated a team member during a client presentation. The part where you dismissed her legitimate concerns about data accuracy. And the part where she demonstrated more professionalism and client focus than you've shown in months. Colton's mouth opened and closed soundlessly. Richard turned to me. Miss Preston, I won't pretend that what just happened was conventional, but I've been reviewing client satisfaction scores and project outcomes for the past quarter. Your work is exceptional. Your approach is exactly what this firm was built on before we got too big and too focused on ego. He looked back at Colton. You're suspended pending a full review of your client management practices. Miss Preston, you have 1 hour to prepare for your meeting with Tanaka Holdings. You'll go with the firm's full support. If you secure this contract working independently with them, Elevate will facilitate the arrangement and handle all administrative and legal infrastructure. You keep your 15% and we'll take a coordination fee for back-end support. That's ridiculous, Colton sputtered. She's a junior consultant who speaks fluent Japanese, understands cultural sensitivity, and actually did the work you were planning to take credit for, Richard interrupted. Colton, leave now. After Colton stormed out, Richard and I spoke alone. I need to be honest with you, he said. I've been concerned about Colton's management style for some time. Multiple junior consultants have left citing his behavior. Client feedback has been mixed at best, but he brings in revenue and the other partners have been reluctant to act. Why are you supporting me now? I asked. Because you just demonstrated exactly what consulting should be. You prioritized the client's needs over your own comfort. You had the courage to speak up when you saw problems. And you did it with preparation and professionalism. He paused. Also, because I spoke with Miss Hayashi briefly as they were leaving. She told me they were planning to end this meeting early because they'd already decided Elevate wasn't the right fit. Your intervention gave us a second chance. That revelation stunned me. They were going to reject us before you started speaking Japanese? Yes. Mr. Yamamoto's question about zoning regulations was a test. When Colton dismissed it, they knew the research was superficial. Richard smiled slightly. You just salvaged what would have been our most embarrassing pitch failure. An hour later, I sat in the Tanaka Holdings hotel suite with my laptop, presenting my alternative analysis. The complete version, with updated data, risk assessments, and realistic timelines. Mr. Tanaka listened carefully, occasionally asking questions in Japanese, sometimes in English. His team took detailed notes. When I finished, Ms. Hayashi spoke. This is significantly different from Elevate's presentation. More conservative, more careful. It's realistic, I said. Mr. Kingsley's approach prioritized aggressive growth. That might look impressive on slides, but your company's reputation is built on sustainable expansion and quality execution. My analysis reflects that philosophy. Mr. Yamamoto nodded approvingly. You researched our company values. Of course. How could I advise on your expansion without understanding your fundamental approach to business? Mr. Tanaka leaned back in his chair, studying me. You took a significant risk today, Miss Preston, walking away from your director, potentially from your firm. Why? I considered the question carefully before answering. Because respect matters more than contracts. You came to Seattle looking for a partner, not a performer. You deserved honesty about what the data actually showed, not a sales pitch disguised as analysis. And because I watched Mr. Kingsley treat people as disposable for 18 months. If I stayed silent while he treated you the same way, I'd be complicit. Silence filled the room for a long moment. Then Mr. Tanaka smiled, the first genuine smile I'd seen from him. We would like to proceed with you as our consulting partner. Not with Elevate, with you personally. We understand you'll need to establish independent infrastructure. We're prepared to wait 30 days for you to set up properly. My heart raced. You're offering me the full contract. With modifications to Mr. Kingsley's proposed scope, Ms. Hayashi said. We want the realistic timeline you presented, not his aggressive version. We want quarterly reviews and adjustment windows. And we want you leading the project directly, not delegating to a team while taking credit. That last part felt pointed, and I appreciated it. We'll start with a 1-year engagement at $50 million, Mr. Tanaka continued. Your 15% retainer on that amount, with performance bonuses tied to specific milestones. If year 1 succeeds, we'll expand to the full 3-year scope. $50 million. 15% of that was $7.5 million. I'd been making $78,000 a year at Elevate. I'll need to formalize the business structure, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. Establish an LLC, set up proper contracts, potentially hire support staff. We have resources that can help, Ms. Kobayashi offered. Our legal team works with consultants internationally. We can recommend corporate attorneys, accountants, administrative specialists. We want you to succeed, Ms. Preston. We spent the next 2 hours discussing logistics, expectations, and timelines. By the time I left their hotel, I had a signed letter of intent and a list of next steps that felt both exhilarating and terrifying. The next month was the most intense of my life. I established Preston Strategic Consulting, working with the attorneys Tanaka Holdings recommended. I negotiated a support agreement with Elevate where they'd provide administrative infrastructure and junior consultant resources in exchange for a 10% coordination fee. Richard's way of keeping some connection to the project while supporting my independence. The Elevate partners conducted their review of Colton. 3 other consultants came forward with documented complaints about his behavior. He was terminated 2 weeks after the Tanaka Holdings meeting. I heard through professional networks that he tried to land at other firms, but word traveled fast in Seattle's consulting community. The story of his public humiliation of a team member and the subsequent loss and recovery of a $150 million contract became something of a legend, not the kind that helps a career. Meanwhile, I threw myself into the Tanaka Holdings project with everything I had. I hired 2 junior consultants, both people I'd worked with before who shared my values about client service and respect. I brought in specialized expertise for regulatory compliance and market analysis. I built a lean, focused team dedicated to excellence. The work was challenging but rewarding. Mr. Tanaka's team appreciated directness and thoroughness. They asked hard questions and expected detailed answers. They pushed back on recommendations when they disagreed, leading to better solutions. 6 months into the project, we'd identified and vetted 12 potential acquisition targets across North American markets. Tanaka Holdings had successfully acquired 3 properties, with integration proceeding ahead of schedule and under budget. Mr. Tanaka invited me to Tokyo to present our progress to his board of directors. Standing in their headquarters, delivering my report in Japanese, I thought about how far I'd come from that conference room in Seattle. After the presentation, Mr. Tanaka asked to speak privately. "We're very pleased with your work," he said. "We'd like to expand the contract to the full 3-year scope with an additional component. We're considering European expansion in year 3. Would you be interested in leading that analysis as well?" The expanded contract would be worth over $200 million total. I'd be managing projects across 3 continents, leading a team of consultants, building something meaningful. All because I'd had the courage to speak up in that conference room, to respect the client more than I feared my boss, to bet on my own competence instead of playing it safe. "Yes," I said, "I'd be honored." A year after the day Colton Kingsley mocked my presentation, I sat in my own office in downtown Seattle. Preston Strategic Consulting occupied a small but professional suite with a view of Elliott Bay. My team had grown to 8 consultants, all people who valued collaboration and excellence. On my desk sat a framed photo from the Tanaka Holdings board presentation in Tokyo, and next to it, a handwritten note from my mother. "So proud of you, Evie, you remembered what matters." I'd bought her a house in a quiet Tacoma neighborhood. She'd retired from both her jobs. Every Sunday, we had dinner together, and she'd ask about my work, reminding me to stay grounded, to remember that every person deserves respect. The consulting industry is still full of people like Colton Kingsley, charismatic performers who prioritize appearances over substance, who see others as stepping stones rather than partners. But it's also full of people who value genuine expertise, cultural sensitivity, and ethical practice. The difference is in choosing which kind of professional you want to be and having the courage to stand by that choice even when it's risky. That conference room confrontation could have ended my career. Instead, it launched something better than I'd imagined possible. Not because I was lucky, but because I was prepared. I'd done the work, learned the skills, built the knowledge, and when the moment came, I was ready to bet on myself. Colton's biggest mistake wasn't just underestimating me. It was underestimating the value of respect, preparation, and genuine client service. In a business built on trust and expertise, those qualities always matter more than a good suit and a confident pitch. Sometimes the system rewards the loudest voice in the room. But sometimes, if you're prepared and brave enough to speak up, the system can be rewritten entirely. If this story resonated with you, I'd appreciate your support by subscribing to Payback Office. We're building a community of 7,000 subscribers who believe in workplace justice, professional integrity, and standing up for what's right, even when it's difficult. Your subscription helps us continue sharing these stories and creating a space where professionalism and respect matter more than hierarchy and ego. Thank you for being here.